Some stories don't have a beginning you can point to. No clear moment where you can say, there, that's where it started. They just accumulate, quietly, the way feeling always does. I'm not someone who takes up much space in a room. Not in a sad way, just honestly. I'm the kind of person who notices things more than I say them, who feels things longer than I show them, who can sit in comfortable silence and consider it a good evening. I have a small circle, a routine I've built carefully and mostly stick to. I don't need much to feel okay. A quiet apartment, familiar streets, the same coffee order I've had since university. I moved into that building at 27, looking for exactly that kind of quiet. And for the first 2 months, I found it.
She was on the 8th floor. I was on the 10th. We met the way you meet people in buildings. Not through choice, but through proximity. The elevator, the lobby, the narrow window between arriving and disappearing behind a closed door. The first time I remember her clearly, she stepped in still slightly out of breath, like she'd been moving fast all day and the elevator was the first moment she didn't have to. She exhaled, looked up at the floor numbers, then glanced at me sideways. Do you ever feel like the elevator comes faster when you don't need it? I smiled. Every time. She laughed, small and genuine. 8th floor. She stepped out. I rode the remaining 2 floors alone. And that was 2 minutes of my Tuesday that I found myself thinking about longer than 2 minutes deserved.
I should say something about the way she looked. Not because it was the first thing, but because it was part of it. She wasn't the kind of beautiful that announces itself. No, she was quieter than that. The kind you notice on the second or third look, not the first. The kind that doesn't ask for your attention, but holds it once it has it. She didn't seem to do much. No heavy makeup, no drawn brows, or anything that looked placed or constructed. Nothing that suggested she'd spent a long time in front of a mirror trying to become something. She just looked like herself. And herself happened to be lovely. Her face had this naturalness to it that's actually rare. The kind where everything just sits right without effort. Clear skin, brows that looked like they'd simply grown that way. Soft, natural, perfectly hers. Eyes that didn't need anything around them to be noticed. She looked like someone who washed her face and walked out the door, and somehow that was enough. More than enough. It was the kind of beauty that doesn't hit you immediately. But once you've seen it, ordinary starts to look like it's missing something. And I think that's what made it worse, in a way. Because it wasn't just that she was beautiful. It was that she seemed completely unbothered by it. Like she had no idea, or didn't care, or both. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing more quietly devastating than that combination.
She talked. Not excessively. Not the kind of talking that fills space for the sake of it. Just naturally. The way people do when they're genuinely comfortable in the world. It was always something small. I tried a new place for lunch today. Complete mistake. Someone on my floor got a dog. I keep hearing it in the mornings. I'm not even mad. It's kind of nice, actually. I feel like this building gets colder every winter. Or maybe I'm just getting older. She'd say these things without preamble, without the stiffness of 2 people still figuring out whether they're allowed to be easy with each other. And I'd respond. Usually something short. Sometimes something that made her smile. And for 30, maybe 40 seconds, the elevator was its own small world. Then 8 would arrive. She'd step out, and I'd ride the last 2 floors alone. Those 2 floors became something I noticed. The quiet after she left, the doors closing again, just me and the hum of the cable and whatever she just said still sitting in the air. Small moments, but the kind that stay. I didn't realize it was happening at first. You don't, usually. It's more like you start paying attention to things you weren't before. Her voice in the lobby before you see her. The specific way she looks when she's tired versus when she's had a good day. The fact that you've quietly learned to tell the difference. Around the 4th month, I stopped pretending I hadn't noticed. We weren't anything with a name. We weren't meeting up or texting or anything that could be defined. Just 2 people in the same building who talked sometimes. Who had collected enough small moments to make each new one feel like a continuation. That was all. But it was something I looked forward to in a way I hadn't looked forward to much in a while.
There was a rainy Thursday, maybe 5 or 6 months in, where we ended up waiting in the lobby together, both slightly damp, both watching the elevator indicator like it owed us something. She shook the rain off her jacket. I always convince myself it won't rain, every single time. Same, I said. I own an umbrella. I've never once used it. She turned and looked at me like that was the most relatable thing she'd heard all week. Why do we even buy them? I think it's optimism, I said. Backwards optimism. She laughed, properly this time. Not a polite smile, a real one. The elevator arrived. We rode up together. 8. See you around, she said, still smiling slightly. Yeah, see ya. The doors closed. 9, 10. I stepped out and walked to my apartment thinking, I like her. Not in a complicated way. Just clearly, quietly, certainly. That's the thing about falling for someone slowly. It doesn't feel like falling. It feels like arriving somewhere you didn't know you were walking toward. And by the time you recognize it, you're already there. She once asked me, early morning, both with coffee, are you a morning person or do you just pretend well? I thought about it honestly. I pretend extremely well. Same, she said, almost conspiratorially, like we were briefly on the same side of something. I thought about that one for days. Another time, coming home late, just the 2 of us. Long day, she asked. Little bit. You? She tilted her head. The kind where you're fine, but you're also very ready to be horizontal. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's exactly it. That's the only way to describe it. She smiled at that, satisfied, like she'd gotten the words right. 8. Sleep well, she said. You too. Doors closed. 9. 10. I stood in my apartment for a moment before doing anything. Just sitting with that small warmth for a second before it faded. I kept waiting for the right moment to say something real. Not a confession, nothing heavy. Just, I'd like to know you better than this elevator allows. Simple. Honest. But the right moment is a strange thing to wait for. It keeps arriving and passing, and you keep telling yourself the next one will be better. And the next one comes and goes, and you're still on the elevator. Still on your way to 10. It was a Friday evening when I saw her in the lobby with him. They came through the door together, mid-conversation, easy with each other, the way people are when they've moved past the part of knowing someone that requires effort. She saw me and smiled. Warm, natural, unchanged. "Hey, do you two know each other?" We didn't. Brief introductions. A handshake. The ordinary mechanics of a moment I hadn't prepared for. We all rode up together. They talked. Comfortable. Familiar. She laughed at something he said. Genuinely. The way I'd seen her laugh before. I stood beside them and watched the numbers and smiled at the right moments. 8. They stepped out together. She looked back once. "Have a good weekend." "You too," I said. 9. 10. The doors opened. I stepped out. Walked to my apartment. Put my keys on the counter. And stood there for a long moment in the quiet of my kitchen. Not dramatic. Not falling apart. Just still. The way you go still when something you were holding finally settles. When you understand, without anyone having to say it, that a chapter you were living in your head was never a chapter at all. I started avoiding her timing after that. Not immediately, not the very next day, but within that week, quietly, without making a decision out of it, I just started paying attention to the clock differently. Leaving a little earlier than usual, coming home a little later. Sometimes sitting inside my apartment for a few extra minutes, not doing anything, just waiting. Until I was reasonably sure the lobby would be empty and the elevator would ask nothing of me. It sounds small, and it was. But it was also the only thing I could manage at the time. Because I wasn't ready to stand in that small space and feel the absence of something that technically never existed. To watch the numbers climb and remember what used to happen at 8. So I just rearranged myself around her schedule. The way I had months ago, but for completely opposite reasons. Back then, I adjusted my timing hoping to find her. Now I adjusted it hoping not to. And there was something quietly painful about that symmetry that I tried not to think about too much. Weeks passed like that, and slowly the sharpness softened. Not because it stopped meaning something, just because that's what time does. It doesn't erase, it just creates distance. Enough to breathe. Enough to see things a little more clearly. And what I saw, when I looked clearly, was this. She was never careless with me. She was warm, consistent, genuinely kind. She just had a whole life that existed beyond that elevator. A life with its own people, its own story already in motion. And I was never part of that story. I was the guy from the 10th floor. Someone she was kind to because that's just who she was. Not because something was building, not because she felt it too. Just kindness. Simple, genuine, ordinary kindness. And I had quietly turned it into something to look forward to. Something to read into. Something to wait for. That wasn't her fault. It was just me. Feeling things fully in a direction that was only ever mine. I don't regret that I felt what I felt. I think I regret a little the waiting. All those moments I stood at the edge of saying something real and chose silence instead. But even that, I understand now. Some people reach before they're sure. I'm not that person. I feel things slowly and fully and privately. And sometimes that means the moment passes before I've finished deciding what to do with it. That's just who I am. She's still on 8. I'm still on 10. And sometimes, riding up alone late at night, I pass her floor and feel something. Not longing, exactly. Not regret. Just a quiet acknowledgement of small moments that were real, even if they didn't go anywhere. Of conversations that mattered to one person more than the other, without either of them knowing. Of a person who made an ordinary building feel, for a while, like somewhere worth coming home to. She had her story. I was just passing through it. And somewhere between the 8th and 10th floor, I had mine. Quietly. Privately. Mine.